Hello, everyone. This is Debra Richardson, and today I am putting the AP in Happy, where accounts payable teams are empowered to protect the vendor master file from fraud. This podcast will give a voice to accounts payable team members by talking about the growing reality of cyber attacks in their world and which vendor setup and vendor management techniques they can apply to protect the vendor master file from fraud. Need training? Visit the Vendor Process Training Center to enroll in your choice of weekly live and on-demand training sessions. Plus, get access to vendor setup form templates and reference tools that will help you and your team avoid fraud, fines, and bad vendor data. So sign up for a free account to get access to free training sessions, vendor process FAQs, and a resource library with information you need to manage your vendor master file. Visit training.debrarrichardson.com today. The link will be in the show notes. Instant payments are here, and the FedNow Service is now available with this new payment rail. Here are 5 quick facts I learned when I recently attended a meeting where this service was the presentation topic. I was surprised. Keep listening. Welcome to episode 297, 7 quick facts about instant payments through the FedNow Service. So before I get into the 7 quick facts, I do want to just give a background of the FedNow Service for instant payments. So the FedNow Service went live on July 20, 2023, and so it's about a year old as of the taping of this podcast. And it is through the Federal Reserve. Now, prior to July 2023, I know they had some pilot programs, but it is now live. And so instant payments are now available through yet another resource. But I will tell you, I kind of like this resource, and we will talk about some 7 quick facts that I learned when I attended a chapter meeting where the director actually presented on that service and answered some of the questions from the chapter members. Now, you might already know that I am the president of the Central Atlantic Region IOFM chapter. I always say that wrong, but I got it right this time, the first time, by the way. But I am the president of that. And so we are a chapter from the Institute of Finance and Management, or IOFM. And the IOFM, I think, has 7 chapters now, but you can go to iofm.com and check it out if you're interested. But if you are a member of IOFM, you probably have seen me anyway, because I'm at the conferences. I am, and if you're in one of the 5 states that the Central Atlantic region serves, then you are probably a member and have been to one of our quarterly meetings. But anyway, part of my job is to make sure that we have speakers at every quarterly meeting. And so I'm on a subscriber list for FedNow and that service, and I've been on there since they were doing, I think, the pilot program. But anyway, I saw in one of the subscriber emails that if you wanted to have a speaker, to click this button, right? And so I clicked it, and I filled out the form, fully expecting to never hear from anyone again. And lo and behold, I did hear from them. They assigned a speaker to come and talk to our chapter during our second quarter meeting. So this was late June. And so that person came, had a great meeting. And by the way, if you are an IOFM member, you can get access to that that recording, and you can actually join any of the chapter meetings that we have. It is those events are on the IOFM events calendar. So just go to iofm.com and click the menu and find the events calendar, and you can access that. Now, if you are a member of IOFM and you would like to watch the recording, it's a great way to earn CEUs, by the way, then you can send me an email and I'll give you a link to it. I just can't put it out there like in the show notes for anyone to access because they do have to be members of IOFM. But you can certainly email me. My email addresses will be in the show notes. And so feel free to email me and I'll send you that link over. Okay. Now that we've got that done, I will just say that that was a really great meeting. We had a lot of folks show up. I gave access or sent the invitation to other IOFM chapter members. And so we had a great turnout. And this was something too that was a trending topic at the May IOFM, the spring AP conference. And so there was a session there where people were talking about instant payments. And so I just invited everyone to come to that second quarter chapter meeting. So in any event, it was a very interesting meeting and I learned some things that I did not know. And so I'm going to share with you 7 things that you can learn, but I will tell you, I will also have some links in the show notes that will get you to the FedNow Service page, right? So you can get more information and you can even sign up to get their subscriber email with FedNow News, which is what I think I am on. So I'm going to put that link in the show notes. But for now, let's go ahead and let's talk about 7 quick facts that I learned. So number 1, the instant payments through the FedNow service, that is only available through your financial institution. So that is something that you'll have to identify if your financial institution offers. Now, I will tell you, she did include like a heat map in the presentation, and the heat map did show that many of the financial institutions are really concentrated on like the East Coast or East, right, of the United States map. There are, right, other financial institutions, in the Midwest and also in the on the West Coast as well. But they do have over 800 live participants, 31 certified service providers, and they have financial institutions in all 50 states. So you do need to make sure that your financial institution offers it, because that's the only way that you get it. And when you go to that page that I'm going to put a link to, you can navigate to see if your financial institution is on that list. So it's only available through your financial institution. And that's kind of like Zelle too. So it's not something that's that surprising. But one thing that was surprising about it being through your financial institution is that some financial institutions will issue a new routing number for what they're considering, right, this new payment rail. Some will not, but some will will issue a new routing number for the FedNow instant payments. So that's the first thing. Now, the second thing is that the payments are for domestic payments only. So there's no paying international vendors. It's only for payments that are going to vendors that are located in the U.S. or financial institutions located in the U.S. So that might be something you would need to take into consideration. And then the next thing is that there is a limit of $500,000. So if you need to pay more than that, now I know that that amount can cover many of your vendor payments, right? But keep in mind, there is that limit that may prevent you from using instant payments with like a larger vendor for a larger type payment. And I know you may have larger payments for things like construction projects. So just keep that in mind. The next thing, and this is actually a benefit that I hadn't thought of, and the payments. Now, the payments are 24/7, 365, which means if you have the choice between a wire and an instant payment for a vendor that absolutely needs to be paid now, and it is not within banking hours, right? Because if you want to send a wire, you have to be within banking hours. Well, if you're outside of banking hours, now you have another option, and that is the FedNow Service instant payments, because the instant payments, again, are 24/7, 365, which means that you don't have to wait until the bank's open in order to pay your vendor if you have the option of a wire or instant payments. Now, the next thing, and I've talked about 1, 2, so payments are 24/7, 365. That was 3. So through your financial institutions, domestic payments only, and then payments are 24/7, 365. So that's 3. And then 4 was the limit of up to 500,000. Now, number 5 is that it does not offer bulk payments. Now, I specifically asked that question because, as many of you know, I used to be an AP senior manager, and I was over not only global vendor setup and payments, but global vendor setup and maintenance, but I was also over all payments as well. And so that's a lot of payments for a Fortune 15 company. And so bulk payments was of interest to me. And so I asked the question, and the answer is no, they are not available now. You have one-by-one payments. But they did indicate, or she did indicate, that it may be in the future. They're looking at that, no promises, but just know that bulk payments are not available. So that's number 5. Now, number 6 is the payments take 5 seconds to send. 5 seconds. Now, a bad part about that is if it's a fraudulent request, right, it takes 5 seconds for the fraudster to get that fraudulent payment. But and I'm going to talk about fraud as the next one, but if you look on the other side of it, which I hadn't thought about, is micro deposits. So if you guys are using a penny test or micro entries, right, as Nacha calls it, right, to verify your vendor's banking information, guess what? Now you don't have to wait until that micro deposit or micro entry or penny test, right, gets to your vendor's bank via the ACH process, right? And it could take up to 2 days, and then even longer for your vendor to actually report it back to you, right? And so this way, it only takes 5 seconds to send. And since it's, $1 or a penny test, under $1, or a micro entry or micro deposit, or whatever you want to call it, then if it's fraudulent, that's well worth whatever that under $1 amount was to find out. And so it can speed up the process of confirming your vendor's banking through a micro deposit, micro entry, or penny test. So I hadn't even thought about that use case, but that I think is a use case that can be looked at to see if it's something that will help what you're currently doing. Or maybe you're not doing micro deposits at all because it does take a while to do. This can now put that back into play for you to add an additional control to verify vendor banking. Now, the, again, bad part about number 6, where it takes 5 seconds to send the payment, is that it also takes 5 seconds to send a fraudulent payment. And so there was something we learned about fraud. And one of the best things that I wrote down and remembered is that when it comes to fraud, it is easier to prevent it than it is to get it back. And so fraud is really better handled prior to the payment being sent. So you definitely need to have, authentication techniques, internal controls, best practices, vendor validations. When you are setting up a vendor, changing a vendor, when you're recording those remittance details, right? Because you want to make sure that it's not fraudulent, because it is faster, right, for the fraudsters to get those fraudulent payments. Now, there is a process for reporting a fraudulent payment. Now, there was no talk about, what success rates are, what percentages are, but there is a process, and that process will largely depend on your financial institution, but there is a process for it. And one thing I also want to point out that I didn't know, the fraud process, you have to identify like a type of fraud, and so the FedNow Service uses the fraud classifier model. And so again, I am going to put a link to the page for the FedNow Service, and it will also have information about the fraud classifier model. And so you will have to identify the fraud type based on that model. So there is a process for fraud. However, the recommendation is that fraud is better handled prior to the payment being sent. All right, so those are the 7 quick facts. I'll go through them very quickly. Number 1 was that you access instant payments of the FedNow Service through your financial institution. It is for domestic payments only is number 2. Number 3 is that the payments are 24/7, 365. Number 4 is that there is a limit of up to $500,000. Number 5 is that bulk payments are not yet available, could be in the future. Number 6 is that payments take 5 seconds to send. And then number 7 is that there is a process for fraud, but fraud is better handled prior to the payment being sent. All right, so I hope that gave you some quick information, initial information that you can use to determine if you want to do some additional research on the FedNow Service. At a minimum, you can check out the page and see if your bank even has that option. If you're on the East Coast, you have a better chance as of now, but they are expanding throughout the U.S. All right, so thanks everyone. I hope you enjoyed the 297th episode of the Putting the AP in Happy podcast, where accounts payable teams are empowered to protect the vendor master file from fraud. Don't forget to check the show notes for the links mentioned in the podcast. And if you enjoyed this episode, consider subscribing and writing a review of my podcast on the platform that you use to listen. Stay happy.